When I woke up in the hospital and saw my apartment address on a package label in my sister's handwriting, my throat went tight like I was swallowing a rock. I had not told Claire where I lived, not the unit number, not even the street, because every time I let her get close, she treated my life like a spare room. The nurse said a woman had been calling every day asking for updates, acting like next of kin, and she had my building keys on her. I tried to sit up and my fore tugged and my ribs screamed, and I realized the problem was not that she found me. It was that she already made herself comfortable somewhere she did not belong. I ended up in the hospital because a guy in a delivery van ran a red in Columbus, clipped my front end, and pushed my car into a light pole hard enough that the airbag punched my face and my knee blew up like a balloon. It was not dramatic the way movies do it. It was just noise and then ringing in my ears and the taste of blood and plastic. And the next clear thing was fluorescent lights and someone cutting my shirt off while asking me my name. After surgery, they kept me because my blood pressure was weird and I spiked a fever. So I was stuck in that limbo where you are awake enough to worry, but not strong enough to move. I was texting my friend Marcus about grabbing my laptop from my apartment so I could pay bills and let my boss know I was alive. And that is when the nurse walked in holding that package like it was normal. The label said Ethan Walker, and under it, in sharp looping letters, was Claire Walker. My sister has a way of writing like she is signing something important even when it is a grocery list. The nurse put it on my tray and said, "Your sister is very persistent," and I asked what she meant, and she told me Claire said she was taking care of things at home so I could focus on healing. I stared at the cardboard and tried to think through pain meds, because Claire did not take care of things. Claire collected access. When we were younger, she would borrow my car and bring it back on empty, borrow my headphones and return them broken, borrow my name when she needed someone to blame, and she would smile like I was the problem for noticing. I called her, and she answered on the second ring, like she had been waiting with the phone in her hand. Her voice came in too bright, too fast, and she said, "Hey, you sound better," which was insane because I sounded like I was chewing nails. I asked her how she got my address, and she laughed like I was joking, and said Mom gave it to her, because you were in the hospital, and somebody had to step up. And I said, "Step up where?" And she said, "At your place, obviously," and I could hear a door beep in the background like a keypad lock. My stomach dropped, because my building had keypad locks on the front entrance, and if she was hearing that sound, then she was not standing outside. She was coming and going. I told her she was not allowed in my apartment, and she went quiet for half a beat, then came back with that soft voice she uses when she wants to sound reasonable. She said, "Ethan, you were going to be in here for days. Your fridge was gross. Your plants were dead. I cleaned. I did you a favor, and I said you do not have a key. How did you get in?" She said Marcus let her in because he did not want to fight with family, and I felt my face burn. Marcus was my buddy from work, not a genius, but I trusted him, and now I pictured him in my hallway with Claire smiling at him and making it feel awkward to say no, and him caving because he hates conflict. I asked Claire to leave right now, and she said I cannot, which was the first honest thing she said. I asked why, and she said because I am already here and I already moved my stuff in. I thought I misheard. So I said, "Say that again." And she said, "Ethan, calm down. It is temporary." And I said I did not agree. And she said, "You were unconscious," like that was an answer. I tried to stand and the room tilted, and the nurse rushed over and told me to lie back down. And I did, because my body made the choice for me. I told Claire I was calling the building manager and the police if she did not leave. She did not yell. She did not plead. She just got flat and said, "If you do that, you're going to make this worse for everyone." And then she hung up. A minute later, Marcus finally texted back, like he had been busy living his normal life while mine was getting hijacked. He said, "Dude, I am sorry. Your sister said she had to water your plants and grab you clothes, and she was crying, and I did not know what to do, and I typed with shaking hands that she moved in. She is living there. Did you give her my spare key?" And he said no. She said the front desk had a copy because you had an emergency contact on file. That made no sense, because I never gave the front desk an emergency contact, and I never gave them Claire's name. And the more I stared at his message, the clearer it got that she did not get in once. She got herself set up like she belonged. That night, I called my building manager, Donna, and told her I needed her to check my unit because someone was in there without permission. Donna is a retired Marine who runs the place like an airport, and she did not act shocked. She just said, "I will handle it." And I heard keys clack in the background like she was already moving. 2 hours later, she called me back and her voice was different, lower, careful, and she said, "Ethan, your locks are not ours anymore." She said somebody replaced the deadbolt and installed a new keypad on your door, and she said your sister told the front desk you authorized it because you lost your keys. I told Donna I did not authorize anything, and Donna said I figured, because she would not show me paperwork, and I told her to call the police, and Donna said I already did, and then she paused and said, "But you need to know something else before you do anything from that hospital bed, because there are boxes stacked in your living room, and I saw a second mattress, and there is a guy in there too, and he did not look like family." The next morning, a detective called my room phone, and the first thing he asked was if I was safe, which sounds polite until you realize he was really asking if I was about to do something stupid. His name was Detective Harper, and he talked like someone who has heard every version of "I swear it is not what it looks like." He said officers responded to my building, but they could not force entry because my sister claimed she lived there and she had a key and the leaseholder was unavailable to confirm. I told him I was the leaseholder. I was confirming right now, and he said I understand, but they still need either a lawful eviction process or evidence of a crime like identity theft or burglary, and he told me to send him anything that proved Claire did not have permission. So I did what you do when you are stuck in a hospital bed with a busted knee and a fever that will not quit. I started making calls like they were stitches. I called my mom first, because I needed to know what she gave Claire. Mom answered like she had been crying, and she said, "Honey, I am so glad you are awake," and I cut her off and asked why she gave Claire my address. Mom said she did not want you alone, and I said I am not alone. I have friends, and she said Claire is family, and I said Claire is a problem. And Mom went quiet like she was counting to 10. Then she said your sister told me you asked her to check on your place while you were in the hospital, and I laughed because it hurt, and I asked why she believed that without asking me. And she said because you were in surgery, and I was scared, and she sounded so sure. I told Mom Claire changed my locks and moved in, and there is a man in my apartment, and Mom started saying no, 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 like she could erase it. Then she did what she always does with Claire. She made it about how hard Claire's life is, how Claire has been stressed, how Claire just needs stability. And I said I do not care, she cannot steal mine. I called Marcus and he drove to the hospital after work, looking like he had not slept. He kept rubbing his palms on his jeans and saying, "Man, I thought I was helping." I told him I was not mad about watering plants. I was mad that he let her inside at all. He said she showed up with a tote bag of clothes and said you wanted her to bring you stuff because you were embarrassed you did not have clean underwear. And he said she knew details that felt real, like your brand of soap. And I realized she had been in my place before, maybe once when I was not home, maybe more than once. Marcus said when she got inside, she went straight to my bedroom like she already knew the layout, and she started pulling boxes from my closet, and he thought she was packing for me, until she unpacked her own clothes into my dresser. He said she told him she was staying because it was safer, and when he asked safer from what, she looked at him like he was slow and said, "Do not ask me that." Donna called later and said she checked the camera footage by the elevators. She said Claire brought in boxes 2 nights in a row, and with her was a guy with a shaved head and a hoodie, and later another woman came with them carrying a plastic storage bin. Donna said none of them looked like they were moving one person's stuff. It looked like somebody setting up shop. Then Donna said something that made my stomach go cold again. She said your sister told the front desk you were in a coma, and she needed access to handle your mail, and she signed a form as your power of attorney. I told her that was impossible because I never gave her that, and Donna said I know, but the signature looked like yours, and she faxed me a copy through the hospital nurse station. It was my name, Ethan Walker, written like I wrote it, but I could see little differences in the loops, like a left-handed person pretending to be right-handed. Claire had practiced. She did not just move in, she forged documents in my name in my building office, in front of cameras, while I was in surgery. When Detective Harper saw it, he did not sigh, he did not act surprised, he just said that helps, and he asked me if I had any reason to think she used my identity for money before. I told him about the time she opened a store credit card when we were in our early 20s, and it showed up on Mom's report because Claire used her social by accident, and Mom paid it off and told everyone it was a misunderstanding, and Harper went quiet and said okay. The hospital social worker swung by, because apparently arguing with police from a bed looks like a mental health crisis on their clipboard. I told her I was fine and my sister broke into my apartment, and she said, "Do you want me to call your family?" And I said I do not want family, I want my home back. She gave me a look like I was being dramatic, which made me want to scream, but instead I asked her to help me get a temporary restraining order. She said that is complicated while you are hospitalized, and I said so is my life right now. And she finally nodded and said she would bring me the paperwork. That afternoon, Claire showed up at the hospital, because of course she did. She walked into my room like she owned it, carrying a smoothie and a bag from Target, and she smiled at the nurse like they were friends. She sat in the chair by my bed and said, "There he is," and she reached for my hand, and I pulled it back and my pulse monitor started beeping faster. She looked annoyed for a second, then fixed her face. She said, "I brought you clothes and your charger," and I said, "I do not want anything from you. I want you out of my apartment." She leaned forward and kept her voice low like she was trying to keep things calm, and she said, "Ethan, you are not thinking straight. You are medicated," and I said, "I am thinking clearly enough to know you forged my signature." Her eyes flicked to the door like she was checking who could hear. She told me she did not forge anything. She said Donna must have misunderstood, and she said she was trying to protect me because people steal packages in the building and you were going to be gone a while. I asked her who the guy was, and her jaw tightened. She said he is just a friend helping her move, and I said he lives there, and she said no, and I said Donna saw a second mattress. Claire's hands curled around her smoothie cup so hard I thought it would crack. Then she did the thing she always does when she is cornered. She turned it into my fault. She said if you had answered my calls before the accident, I would not have had to do it this way. And I said I did not answer because every time I let you in, you take more. She stood up and looked down at me, and she said, "Okay, if you want war, you can have it, but you need to understand what you are inviting into your life." I asked what that meant, and she smiled without warmth and said, "You think you are the only one who has keys to your little safe world." And then she walked out. An hour later, Detective Harper called back and said, "Ethan, we have a problem because your sister filed a report that you asked her to stay at your place, and now you are trying to throw her out because you are unstable after your accident, and she gave them a statement that you have a history of outbursts and you threatened her." Harper said he did not believe it, but it was enough that the officers would be careful about entering without a court order. Then he said the other issue is that the man with her, the one in your unit, has a prior for assault and a current warrant for skipping court, and Harper said if he is inside your apartment, we may have leverage, but only if we can prove he is trespassing. I stared at the ceiling and felt my skin go clammy under the hospital blanket, because Claire did not just move in, she moved danger in with her, and she was betting I could not move fast enough to stop it. The first real help came from someone I barely knew, which is usually how it goes when your own people are a mess. My neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Alvarez, called my phone that evening because Donna gave her my number, and she did not start with sympathy, she started with facts. She said, "Ethan, your sister has been in and out at all hours, and last night I heard arguing, and this morning a man knocked on my door asking if I had seen a black backpack. She told him no, and he swore at her, and she said she has lived through worse, and she is not scared of his mouth, but she is scared of what he brought with him. She said she watched through her peephole, because that is what you do when something feels wrong, and she saw Claire hand him cash in the hallway like she was paying him. Then she said the thing that made everything snap into place. She said your sister is not acting like a guest. She is acting like she is running something." I asked Mrs. Alvarez if she could take a video through her peephole of people coming and going, and she said I already did, because I am not stupid, and she texted me 3 clips. In one, the hoodie guy was carrying a small printer box. In another, the other woman carried a stack of white envelopes that looked like mailers. In the third, Claire was standing by my door telling the guy to keep his voice down, and he shoved past her into my apartment like she was furniture. She followed him in, eyes darting, and before the door closed I heard her say not here, not in his place, and that sentence hit me harder than the accident did, because she knew it was my place and she did not care. Marcus helped me contact my bank and freeze anything that could be used from my apartment, like checks in my desk and the spare debit card I kept locked in a drawer. The banker asked if I had reason to suspect identity theft, and I said yes, and she asked if the suspect had access to personal documents, and I said she is living in my home, and she changed the locks. The banker's voice went from friendly to crisp, and she said file a police report, and we will flag everything, and she said I should also check my credit immediately. Marcus pulled it up on his phone while sitting next to my bed, and I watched his eyebrows climb as he scrolled. There were 2 inquiries from the last 48 hours, one from a payday lender and one from a cell phone provider. I felt my mouth go dry. That was Claire's pattern. She moved in, then she grabbed whatever could be turned into money fast, and then she disappeared and left the wreck for someone else. Detective Harper got the videos from Mrs. Alvarez and said that was enough to bring a judge a request for an emergency order. But he needed one more thing: proof the occupant was not authorized. He told me to email him my lease. I did, from my phone, fingers shaking. He said good. And he said the building cameras and the forged power of attorney form would help. Then he said something that sounded small, but carried weight. He said, "Ethan, have you ever told your sister your social security number?" I said no. Harper said then she got it from somewhere in your apartment, and that means she has been through your files, and the bank activity suggests she is actively using them. So the case shifts from family drama to felony. That night Claire called me, and she did not pretend this time. She said you were trying to have me arrested, and I said you forged my name, you moved into my apartment, you are opening accounts, and you brought a wanted man into my home. She said you do not know what you are talking about, and I said I have videos, and she laughed like I was a kid threatening to tell a teacher. Then she said, "Listen, I am going to make this simple. You tell the police it was a misunderstanding, and you give me 2 weeks, and I will leave, and you can have your life back." I asked her what 2 weeks was for, and she said to fix what I need to fix. I asked what she needed to fix, and she said you would not understand, and I said try me. Her voice shook then, just for a second, and she said I am not doing this for fun, Ethan. She said I have people after me, and I needed somewhere they would not look, and she said your building has security and cameras, and they cannot just kick the door in like in movies. I told her I was not a witness protection program, and she said you are my brother. I said being my brother never stopped you before. Then she got angry, and she said you always act like you are better than me because you have a job and a place and you pay your bills, and she said you do not get points for doing the basics. I said the basics are exactly what you keep wrecking. She went quiet, and in that quiet I heard movement on her end, like she was walking around my living room while talking to me. Then she said, "Okay, if you want the truth, here it is," and she told me she was dating a guy named Trevor, and he was controlling, and he watched her phone, and he took her car keys, and he hit the wall next to her head once to make his point, and she said she left, and he tracked her down twice, and the second time she ran to Mom's house, and Mom panicked and called the cops, and Trevor told the cops Claire was unstable and making it up, and the cops left, and Trevor waited down the street and sent her a picture of Mom's front door like a threat. She said after that she knew she could not stay with Mom without putting Mom in danger. She said she could not afford a hotel. She said she thought of me because my place is quiet and I do not post my address online, and Trevor does not know where I live. If she had stopped there, I might have felt something other than rage, because I am not made of stone, and I know what fear sounds like even when it comes from someone I do not trust. But then she added the part that flipped it, and she said I needed cash to disappear for real, and the fastest way is what I am doing. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I am not stealing from you. I am using your address to do business." And I said, "What kind of business?" And she said, "Do not make me spell it out." Then she said, "You get to choose, Ethan. You can hate me, and you can sleep at night because you did the right thing, or you can help me survive, and you can pretend you never knew." And she hung up again. Marcus sat there staring at me like he had just heard the worst possible version of family. And he said, "What the hell does do business mean?" And I said it means she is running something illegal out of my apartment, and she thinks the hospital bed makes me helpless. The next morning Harper called and said the judge signed the emergency order, and officers would go with Donna to enter my unit and remove unauthorized occupants. He said there is a risk because the guy in there might run or fight, and they would do it safely, but he needed me available by phone in case they needed confirmation. I told him I would be awake. I did not sleep anyway. When the call came, it was not Harper, it was Donna, and she sounded like she was whispering even though she never whispers. She said, "Ethan, the door is open," and she said there is no one here, and she said your apartment is stripped, like someone packed it fast, and then she paused and said, "But they did not take everything, because there is a stack of envelopes on your kitchen table with your name on them, and they are not bills, they are debit cards." I got discharged early because I told the doctor the truth, that my sister was committing crimes in my home, and I needed to handle it before I came back to nothing. The doctor did not like it, but he signed off with strict instructions and a follow-up appointment, and Marcus picked me up in his truck because my car was totaled. The ride back to my building felt like I was watching my life through the wrong window, because my body was weak, my knee was wrapped, and my hands would not stop shaking when I thought about what Claire left behind. Marcus kept trying to make jokes to keep me from spiraling, and I kept hearing Claire's voice saying you are inviting something into your life, like she knew exactly how bad it could get. Donna met us in the lobby with a contractor, and she did not sugarcoat anything. She said the police cleared the unit and photographed everything, and she said Claire's friend with the warrant was gone, and she said the other woman was gone too, and she said they left in a hurry because the hallway camera caught them hauling bags at 3 in the morning. Donna handed me a plastic evidence bag with those debit cards, and she said the officers took the rest. I stared at the cards and saw my name printed cleanly for different bank logos, different designs, all of them mine, none of them mine. My chest felt tight and my ears rang, and Marcus put a hand on my shoulder like he was trying to keep me standing. Up in my apartment, the place looked like a robbery that got interrupted. My couch was still there, but the cushions were off. My TV was gone, and the wall mount hung empty. My dresser drawers were pulled out and dumped. My closet was half empty. My work laptop was still there, sitting on my desk like a dare, but the hard drive was missing. In my bedroom, the second mattress was gone, but the carpet had dents like it sat there long enough to matter. In my kitchen, the table was covered in paper scraps, cut-up envelopes, and a cheap card reader device. There was a printer on the floor with the cord ripped out of the wall. It smelled like stale coffee and sweat, and like people who do not care what a place feels like because it is not theirs. Detective Harper showed up in person, which I did not expect, and he walked through with gloves on and looked around like he was taking inventory of a crime scene and a family tragedy at the same time. He told me Claire likely ran a card drop scheme, using my address to receive cards opened in my name, then moving money fast before anyone caught it. He said the guy with the warrant might have been the muscle or the runner. He said the other woman might have been a mule. He did not say it like a lecture. He said it like he was confirming what I already knew in my gut, that my sister did not just take shelter, she turned my home into a tool. Harper asked if I wanted to press charges. I did not answer right away because the question was heavier than it sounds, because pressing charges against your sister is not like pressing charges against a stranger. Strangers do not show up at holidays and sit across from your mother. Strangers do not know the stories you told as a kid. Strangers do not look like you in the eyes. But then Harper pulled out his phone and showed me something, a screenshot from an ATM camera, grainy but clear enough. Claire standing with the hoodie guy, withdrawing cash from an account in my name. Her face was calm, like she was buying groceries. My hands started shaking again, and I said yes. The next 48 hours were a blur of calls, reports, and locks. I changed my passwords. I replaced my door. I sat with my bank fraud department on hold for so long that the hold music started to feel like it lived in my skull. I filed identity theft reports. I wrote a sworn statement with Harper. I watched my mother leave voicemails that swung from pleading to furious, because Claire called her and told her I was betraying family. I did not call Mom back. I could not handle Mom making excuses while I was holding my life together with paperwork. Then the twist I did not see coming hit me on a Tuesday afternoon when I went to the property management office to pick up mail I had missed. The clerk handed me a thick envelope, and my name was on it, but the return address was a law office. Inside was a notice of eviction filed against Ethan Walker for illegal activity conducted in the unit, and the building was listed as the complaining party. My face went hot. I marched back to Donna's office and waved it at her, and Donna looked like she wanted to break something. She said it was not from her. She said someone filed it online using the building's information, and she said it was forged. Claire was trying to get me evicted from my own apartment so she could disappear and leave me homeless, because that is what Claire does when she gets scared. She burns the ground behind her so nobody can follow. Harper said the filing included a fake signature from Donna and a fake incident log, and the court would likely dismiss it once they verified. But it still meant Claire was actively using my identity and my address and my building to create a paper trail of blame. That night, my mom finally showed up at my door. I did not invite her in at first, but she stood in the hallway with tears on her cheeks and her hands shaking. And she said, "Please, Ethan, I need to know you are okay." And I let her inside because my anger does not erase that she is my mom. She looked around at my apartment like it was a corpse, and she covered her mouth when she saw the empty TV mount. She said she did not know it was this bad. I said you did not want to know. She sat on my couch and said Claire called her and said Trevor found her. And she said Claire is terrified. And she said, "Ethan, if the police arrest her, Trevor will find her when she gets out, and she will be dead. And she said those words like she was forcing them through a wall in her throat. I asked Mom why she kept saying Trevor like he was a monster I had to accept without proof. Mom said because I saw the bruises. Mom said because I heard him on the phone screaming at her. Mom said because I went to her place, and she was shaking, and she would not leave the bathroom. Mom said Claire is not making it up. I believed Mom, because Mom does not exaggerate. She minimizes, and if she was admitting it, it was real. So there it was, the worst kind of choice, because I could not ignore that Claire might be running from someone dangerous, but I also could not let her use that as cover for burning my life down. I told Mom I was not dropping charges, and Mom slapped her palm against her knee and said, "So you are going to let your sister get hurt?" And I said, "I am not hurting her. Her choices are hurting her." Mom stood up and started pacing, and she said, "You could help her just this once." And I said I helped her my whole life, just not with money, with silence, with excuses, with letting things slide. Mom stopped pacing and looked at me like she did not recognize me, and she said, "You are cold." I said, "No, I am done." Right then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, and when I opened it, it was a picture of my apartment door from the hallway, taken from my peephole angle, and under it was a message that said, "You think your locks matter." And then another message came immediately after, saying, "Tell the cops to back off, or I will make you the story." I stared at the screen, and Mom leaned in and saw it, and she went pale, and she whispered, "Ethan, that is Trevor." I called Detective Harper and forwarded the texts, and for the first time since this started, his voice sounded sharp. He told me not to respond, and he told me to stay inside, and he told me officers would increase patrol around my building. Then he asked if I had ever met Trevor. I said no. Harper asked if Claire ever told me his last name. I said she never told me anything. Harper said, "Okay, we do this another way." He connected me with a victim advocate and a domestic violence unit officer named Sergeant Klein, and Klein talked like someone who has no patience for games. She said if Claire is a victim, she needs help, but if Claire is committing fraud and dragging you into it, that does not get erased. Klein said Trevor threatening you is a separate crime, and it gives them leverage. She asked me if I wanted a protection order. I said yes. She asked if I had cameras. I said not yet. She told me to get them today. Marcus went with me to a hardware store, and we installed a doorbell camera and a second indoor cam pointed at the entryway. And it felt ridiculous doing home security while my knee throbbed and my hands shook, but it also felt like taking oxygen after being underwater. That night, around 1:40 a.m., the doorbell camera pinged my phone. I watched the live feed and saw a man in a dark jacket standing too close to my door, head down like he was listening. He held up a phone and typed, and my phone buzzed with another unknown text that said, "Open up, I just want to talk." My mouth went dry. I did not move. I watched him on the screen lift his hand like he might knock. Then he stopped, leaned into my peephole, and smiled like he knew I was watching. Mom was asleep on my couch because she refused to go home, and I woke her up and showed her the feed. She covered her mouth and started shaking. I called 911 and tried to keep my voice steady. And I said, "There is a man outside my door. He is threatening me." And the dispatcher told me to stay inside and officers were on the way. The man outside did not break in. He did not have to. He just stood there long enough to make it clear he could come back whenever he wanted. Then he walked away down the hall like he owned the place. The officers arrived and checked cameras and took statements, but by then he was gone. Harper called me in the morning and said they identified him from the building hallway footage, and his name was Trevor Haynes, and he had priors for harassment and a restraining order violation in another county. Harper said they were looking for him now, and he said the most important thing is finding Claire, because Trevor is circling you to get to her. Harper asked if I had any idea where she might go. I said no, and I meant it, because Claire keeps her real plans in her pocket and shows you the version that benefits her. But Mrs. Alvarez did. She called me that afternoon and said, "Ethan, your sister came back last night when you were gone, and she was crying in the hallway, and she knocked on my door, not yours, and she said, 'Please, please, please.'" Mrs. Alvarez said she did not open the door because she is not stupid, but she listened, and Claire said Trevor found her, and he is blaming her for something, and he is going to kill her if she does not bring him money. Mrs. Alvarez said Claire kept saying, I messed it up, and then she left, and she walked out with a duffel bag and got into a white sedan. That was enough to make a plan. Harper and Klein met me at the station the next day, and they did not ask me to forgive anyone. They asked me to focus on what I could control. They said Claire had active fraud charges pending based on the accounts in my name, but they were willing to use that as pressure, not just punishment. They said if Claire came in and cooperated against Trevor and the fraud ring she was tied to, they could push for a plea deal and protective measures. They said if she stayed out, Trevor would keep hunting and the fraud charges would stack, and I would keep being collateral. So I did something that felt gross and necessary at the same time. I texted Claire from my number, the one she would always respond to even when she hated me. And I said I know Trevor was at my door. I have cameras now. The police know who he is. You can either let him keep chasing you through my life, or you can come in and end it. I did not threaten her. I did not beg. I just put the facts down like bricks. She read it. I saw the read receipt. Minutes passed. Then my phone rang. Claire's voice came through thin and wrecked, not the confident voice she used in my hospital room. She said he is going to hurt Mom. She said he would burn Mom's house down. She said he wants the money from the cards, and she said she cannot get it because the accounts are frozen. I said I froze them because you stole my identity. She whispered I know. She said I did not think you would go this far. I said you changed my locks while I was in surgery. Claire, you went far first. She started crying, full body crying where she could not catch a breath. She said she tried to leave him and he found her every time. And she said when she met the hoodie guy, his name was Ray, he promised he could get her cash fast. And he said all she had to do was let packages come to an address that was clean. She said she thought of mine because it was safe and because she knew I would be stuck in the hospital and not notice. She said it like a confession and an accusation at the same time, like she wanted me to understand and hate her in one breath. I asked her where she was. She said she was in a motel off I-71, and she said she did not have enough money to pay another night. I told her to stay there and I would send Detective Harper the address, and she said no, because if police show up, Trevor will see it on some scanner app and he will come. I told her she was not the only one scared. She said I know, and her voice went small, and she said I did not want to drag you in, and I said you did it anyway. Then she said something that made my throat close. She said, Ethan, I left something in your apartment because I could not carry it, and I was afraid to throw it out. She said it is a flash drive, and it has everything Ray told me to do, names, accounts, drop addresses, and it has Trevor's text to me where he talks about hurting me and Mom. She said I hid it inside the back of your bathroom cabinet, taped under the shelf, because I knew you would find it eventually. I said you could have just given it to the police. She said I did not trust anyone. She said I still do not. Then she said I trust you the least and the most, and I hated that it made sense. I found the flash drive exactly where she said it was, and I handed it to Harper that night. Harper did not smile. He just said this is big. He said if it is legit, it gives us the fraud ring and it gives us Trevor, and it also gives us leverage to keep you from being blamed for what she did under your name. He said that last part like he knew that was the thing I cared about most, because I could handle being hurt. I could not handle being erased. 2 days later, Harper called and said they arrested Ray on the warrant and seized his phone, and the flash drive matched messages on it. Harper said Trevor was picked up on a traffic stop after they put out an alert, and when officers searched his car, they found a folder with printed photos of my building, including my door and Mom's house, and a handwritten list of times. Harper said Claire came in with Klein and gave a statement. Harper said she asked if I was okay. I did not ask if she was okay. I just sat on my couch and stared at my empty TV mount and felt my hand stop shaking for the first time in weeks. Claire did not walk away clean. She took a deal that included probation, restitution, and a no-contact order with Ray and anyone tied to the ring. She had to admit what she did to me in a courtroom with strangers watching, and she had to answer a judge when asked why she used her brother's identity, and she looked straight ahead and said, because I thought he would survive it. That sentence hit harder than the accident ever did, because it was honest in the worst way, like my life was a surface she could step on as long as it did not break. I got my eviction notice dismissed and my credit repaired over months, not days, and it was ugly, slow work, like scrubbing something that keeps staining back through. Marcus helped me rebuild my living room and found me a cheap TV on Facebook Marketplace because he felt guilty and because he is that kind of friend. Donna wrote a statement that saved my lease, and she told me if I ever let Claire within 10 feet of her building again, she would personally escort her out, and I believed her. Mrs. Alvarez brought me food twice a week until my knee was strong enough to stand at the stove, and she told me family is not a free pass. It is a responsibility, And sometimes the responsibility is saying no. Mom and I are still not fully okay. She said I should have protected Claire more. I said I should have been protected too. Sometimes we can talk like normal, and sometimes she slips and says your sister just made mistakes, and I feel my jaw tighten and I change the subject because if I push, we will both say things we cannot take back. Claire is in a program now, and she sends letters because she cannot text or call. I read them. I do not reply. She writes like she is trying to explain herself into forgiveness, and maybe one day I will have something to say back, but right now the only thing I can offer is distance. The part that still messes with me is this. Trevor did not pick my door because he cared about me. He picked it because I was a path to Claire, and Claire picked my apartment because she thought I would take the hit and keep standing. I used to think being the stable one in the family meant I was safe. Now I know it just means you are the easiest target when someone needs a floor to stand on, and the only real protection is deciding where your line is, then holding it even when the people you love call you cruel for it.